Welcome to the 65th A.W. Mellon Lectures in the Fine Arts. In this six-part lecture series entitled The Thief Who Stole My Heart, The Material Life of Chola Bronzes from South India, circa 855 to 1280, art historian Vijaya Deheja discusses the work of artists of Chola India, who created exceptional bronzes of the god Shiva, invoked as Thief Who Stole My Heart. Graceful, luminous sculptures of high copper content portrayed the deities as sensuous figures of sacred import. Every bronze is a portable image carried through temple and town to participate in celebrations that combine the sacred with the joyous atmosphere of carnival. In these lectures, Deheja discusses the images as tangible objects that interact in a concrete way with human activities and socio-economic practices. She asks questions of this body of material that have never been asked before, concerning the source of wealth that enabled the creation of bronzes, the origin of copper not available locally, the role of women patrons, the strategic position of the Chola Empire at the center of a flourishing ocean trade route between Aden and China, and the manner in which the Cholas covered the walls of their temples with thousands of inscriptions, converting them into public record offices. These sensuous portrayals of the divine gained their full meaning with critical study of information captured through a variety of lenses. In this sixth lecture, entitled Worship in Uncertain Times, The Secret Burial of Bronzes in 1310, originally delivered at the National Gallery of Art on May 8, 2016, Professor Deheja looks at the dramatic secret burial of bronzes in temple after temple in 1310, an attempt to safeguard them from armies of the Delhi Sultanate that marched south to seize the fabled jewels of the Chola temples. These buried bronzes emerged in the 20th century when unsuspecting laborers began temple expansion projects. The lecture concludes with a look at today's art market and the transformation of beloved sacred bronzes into highly prized works of art.
Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to the sixth and final lecture in the series titled The Thief Who Stole My Heart. My thanks first to you, my receptive audience, and many of you have followed this series of talks over the past five weeks. I'd like to express my gratitude to the National Gallery of Art and to CASVA, the Center for the Advanced Study in the Visual Arts, in particular to Dean Elizabeth Cropper, and to Teresa O'Malley and Peter Lucart, and to various members of the staff. They helped make my stay in DC a real pleasure and facilitated my preparation for these lectures. And thank you, Olivia and Frank, up there in the projection booth, for your smooth handling of my visuals. And finally, I'd like also to acknowledge the government of Tamil Nadu and its HR&CE department for their cooperation in this project. What is HR&CE? Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowments. It's a department of the Tamil Nadu government that is in charge of over 41,000 temples in the state, ancient to modern. In our previous 5 sessions together, we have focused on bronzes of God Shiva in his many manifestations, both peaceable and fierce. And in each manifestation, we saw him accompanied by his consort Uma, whose role seemed to be that of a mere supportive admirer. That indeed she is, but she is much more than mere consort. She is a powerful force in her own right. And today we will start by giving her her rightful due. Before we turn to the 1200s and to the uncertain times that prevailed at the very end of Chola rule. And we must return then to the year 855, when Vijayalaya Chola, the founder of the dynasty, captured the town of Tanjavur and made it his capital. What was his first major act in his new capital? A royal charter tells us he consecrated there the image of the goddess, who is the destroyer of demon Nishumba. By the grace of that goddess, Vijayalaya bore the whole earth as lightly as if it were a garland. We're looking not at the original stone image of Vijayalaya, but at an early 11th century bronze that portrays the goddess as a slender and sensuous deity, though clearly formidable, resting one foot against the crumpled figure of demon Nishumba. Her 8 arms brandish various weapons. She wears a serpent as breastband, holds a skull bowl in the left front palm. Her hair, standing up in fearsome disarray to create a halo-like effect, is adorned with a skull. The third eye in her forehead, fangs at either end of her mouth, contrast with the beauty of her form. The image makes us aware of the implicit continuum between the auspicious and the fearsome. This goddess who destroys demon Nishumba is none other than Shiva's consort Uma in her fierce aspect, an independent warring goddess who took on fierce male opponents representing various forces of evil and triumphed over them with ease. In such roles, she is often addressed as Durga, meaning invincible one, and she is of pivotal importance in the context of Indian kingship. What do I mean? Well, whichever deity a monarch normally worships, say Shiva or Vishnu, when he looks for triumph in battle, he must turn to the goddess. And this belief finds clear expression in both of India's great epics, in which its heroes, Rama in one case and Arjuna in the other, worship the goddess before facing enemies on the battlefield. Durga Uma's most applauded feat is her destruction of the brutish demon Mahisha, who took the form of a buffalo. In Tamil Nadu temples, it's customary to depict her standing victorious on the severed head of the buffalo, and very rare to see the battle itself. But in this temple built by Queen Shembian, the battle is portrayed in a small relief above the standing goddess, with the retreating demon shown in human form with a buffalo head. And from the time of Queen Shembian in the mid-10th century, the victorious goddess appears regularly in a niche in Chola temples dedicated to Shiva. The ghastly deed is over, and the beautiful goddess stands serene and confident upon the severed buffalo head. By the way, the darkening of the stone that you see here is due to the image having been lustrated regularly with fragrant oil. Among the earliest bronzes of this form is this badly damaged, partly mutilated image that nevertheless makes a powerful statement. The individual who discovered and retrieved the bronze in the early 20th century clearly did not understand the significance of the buffalo head on which the goddess stands, and you can see from the chisel marks that he attempted to chisel it away. He also chiseled away Durga's second pair of arms. In the course of his ham-fisted attempt to remove the encrustations and accretions that resulted from burial underground, he further damaged the form of the exceedingly slender, lithe, and youthful goddess. Created in a coastal workshop, the bronze was commissioned soon after the appearance of the Cholas in 855. An image of this goddess, created 100 years later, also in a coastal workshop, dispenses with the buffalo head beneath her feet. Here she holds the conch shell and discus. Both are symbols of God Vishnu. Why? Because in the Tamil country, Durga is considered to be sister of Vishnu. Making Shiva's consort into the sister of his rival deity Vishnu was a neat strategy, unheard of in North India, to bring together two different strands of sectarian worship. It would not do to underestimate the persuasive and compelling appeal of the goddess, whose worship was widespread among large sections of the Tamil population. Shrines to Kala Pidari, the goddess as the power of time and of darkness, Kala means both, existed across the Kaveri Delta, and she was venerated by large sections of the population. Often she is referred to as just Kali, Dark One, as in this powerful bronze that portrays an exceedingly lean goddess, sitting at ease with one leg bent to rest on her seat and the other pendant. Her open hair is arranged in halo-like formation, with a cobra hood and a human skull crowning the arrangement. Entwined serpents form her breastband, and she wears a sacred cord that's threaded with human skulls. In two rear hands, she holds a noose and a trident-headed bell. A skull cup rests in her front left palm, while her front right hand is in the gesture of blessing and reassurance. The lugs that you see along the pedestal confirm that this powerful bronze of the goddess is a portable festival image. Once the 10th century Chola kings got into their stride, we have seen that they turned the Kaveri Delta into the land par excellence of god Shiva, rebuilding in stone the many earlier shrines that were the focus of the hymns of the saints. The goddess temples that already existed across the area remained in worship, but they were neither converted into stone nor given major support. That such a pattern was the norm across the Chola kingdom is confirmed by the numerous land grants made to Shiva temples. In specifying the boundaries of such gifted land, the inscriptions always exempt the land occupied by the local temple to goddess Kali. In our meetings thus far, we have focused on bronze portable images, including those we've seen today. These played a crucial role in mainstream worship in Tamil Nadu. This was a worship mediated by temple priests, an ongoing form of temple worship that continues to this day to center around these bronze deities. Prior to turning our focus to worship in the unsettled times of the 13th century, I'd like to introduce you briefly to a seemingly sinister aspect of the sacred feminine that had no connection with this bronze tradition, an unusual stream of worship dedicated to the goddess. And this is a belief in a group of female goddesses known as yoginis, generally 64 in number, worshipped within circular temples open to the sky through a series of esoteric rites that were outside of regular temple worship. The Chola Yogini temple that housed these goddesses in niches along its interior walls no longer stands. But a small group of seated yoginis carved from granite are seen today in museums around the world, courtesy of an intrepid early 20th century dealer, C.T. Lu, based in Paris. These four-armed yoginis are portrayed with attributes that suggest their fearsome character. Fangs at the corner of their mouth, wickedly curved eyebrows, hair that stands up around their head in halo-like formation, snakes and skulls in their adornment, and a skull cup in the left front palm. Each goddess sits cross-legged on the ground with her vehicle lightly incised on the band below her feet. Let's look at them more closely. A yogini with the withered neck at left has hollow cheeks, bulging eyes, dangerous eyebrows, fanged mouth, loose hanging breasts. She wears snakes as armlets, a skull above her diadem, and her vehicle is an iguana. A trident holder at center, who is consuming a piece of flesh, wears snake armlets and has a bird mount. A yogini far right, wearing a sacred thread studded with skulls, has a serpent mount, and a serpent hood stands up above her diadem. Reflecting the ferocity of these powerful images is a Sanskrit literary text, Yashastilaka, composed in the year 959 for the arch-enemy of the Cholas. The Rashtrakuta king Krishnadeva had just defeated Parantaka Chola in the disastrous battle of Takolam, and you will remember he had killed Parantaka's son and crown prince. He was still camped in Chola territory, celebrating the victorious aftermath of the battle, when his poet, who had accompanied him, composed this text. Might the poet have actually seen this very yogini temple? Listen to his graphic description. As abruptly as darkness descends at nightfall, even so, without warning, did the great yoginis appear out of the sky, the earth, the depths of the nether regions, and the four corners of space. Between the edges of the long teeth protruding from their mouths, the yoginis held the clouds. Their dark, loose tresses splayed out across the sky and darkened it, and the terrible glowing skulls stood out among the black tresses like stars in the night sky. The faces of these yoginis were truly terrible to behold as they frowned with arrogance. Another truly formidable yogini on the right wears as a earring a severed human hand, and a serpent in the other. The goddess, surviving only as a damaged torso, is enveloped in snakes. They're knotted around her breasts, form her necklace, her armlets, while human skulls are threaded along her sacred thread. A stunningly beautiful yogini, holding a hammer and nasty-looking pincer, has her strands of hair ending in ringlet-like curls. She's adorned with a skull above her diadem, and her vehicle is a serpent. A slightly less ferocious group wear a conical crown that holds their tresses in control, and they carry a less fearsome group of attributes, like this bell-ringing yogini. The imperious yogini on the left holds a jar that probably has medicinal come magical associations. The yogini on the right holds a broom of sacred darba grass and what looks like a dustpan. But these are not mundane everyday objects. Rather, they are indispensable tools used in sacrificial ritual. They speak of her elevated status, her authority, her sanctity. And by the way, you may visit her in the Sackler Gallery right across the mall from us. I bypass the esoteric rites involved in worship of the yoginis. Those interested may refer to an entire book I wrote on the subject. Here, let's place the creation of the yogini images in the context of Chola stone sculptures and temple bronzes. Consider the close similarities in the handling of form, the body proportion, the wide face, between the yogini on the right and a female image from the walls of a Chola temple west of Tanjavur. Or compare this yogini with another female figure from the same temple. Despite the fearsome aspect of the yoginis as compared to a mere female attendant, the similarities in their treatment is strikingly evident. And so, too, one may compare the yoginis with the bronze image of Uma, whom we assigned in Lecture 2 to the capital style around the year 900. Despite the seeming difficulties of a comparison between a seated yogini and a standing Uma, it's easy to discern similar bodily proportions, a broad face, and a parallel treatment of ornamentation. The Chola yoginis were carved sometime in the first half of the 10th century by artists working in the stylistic mode of the central capital area. Let's turn now to the 13th century and to developments during the last century of Chola rule. In the year 1212, Chola Emperor Kulothunga III completed the fourth and last royal temple at Tribhuvanam on the south bank of the Kaveri, a mere 6 miles away from Rajaraja II's temple at Darasaram. Rising to a height of 126 feet, it takes to a culmination the trend started by Rajaraja I of building monumental temples at sites with no sacred history, linked exclusively with royalty and personal power. The temple undoubtedly once possessed a stunning array of bronzes commissioned around the year 1212. Few of these remain. One such is this magnificent begging lord that carries on the high tradition of workmanship that we saw last week in late 12th century bronzes created by the coastal workshop responsible for the Valampuram bronzes. The serpent, largely hidden under the clothing in the temple bronze, winds itself loosely around Shiva's groin, as you see clearly in the begging lord from Tiruvangadu, on whom we focused in Lecture 4. This level of artistry was sustained despite the natural calamities that struck the coastal belt in the early 13th century. Step back in time with me to the year 1246. The wealthy merchant Uttaman Nambi stands watching the waves pound the port of Maraikadu, pondering the fact that the ocean, once a friend to all who lived along the water's edge, had suddenly turned into an enemy. A towering wall of water had inundated towns and temples along the coastal belt, causing devastation. Temples had lost registers and documents pertaining to the possession of lands. Village assemblies ruled that temple meetings would take place during daylight hours, since the cost of oil to keep lamps burning for evening meetings was too high. The last straw was the raid by a Sri Lankan general, and merchant Nambi decided it was time for him to intervene. He had made a large donation of 50,000 coins, gold coins, for repairs at the Maraikadu temple. He had also pledged to undertake the consecration of several bronzes and to make provisions for their daily worship, as well as processional worship during temple festivals. In return, the temple trustees had bestowed on him the deed of the temple and provided him with a range of coveted temple honors. Raids by various chieftains resulted in unheard-of losses. In one instance, all 20 bronzes of a temple on the south bank of the Kaveri at Velvikudi were carried away. Here, too, a lay devotee instituted a search for them, discovered them 2 years later. The inscription doesn't specify where, and he brought them back. With a major gift of gold, this devotee, too, secured the right to reconsecrate them for temple worship. Several coastal temples had been unable to celebrate their festivals for 20 years or so, following what appears to have been a tsunami. Temple lands had lain fallow because of the astronomical cost of reclamation. We read that a piece of land that cost 2,000 gold coins to purchase now needed 3,000 additional coins for its reclamation. The unfortunate state of affairs in the mid-13th century is further evident from a series of inscriptions from coastal temples. These tell us that, unable to make ends meet, individuals sold themselves and members of their family as temple servants. I give you just one example from several dozens of inscriptions that speak of this dire state of affairs within the Chola kingdom. At Valampuram, the coastal temple, whose striking 12th century bronzes we encountered last week, an inscription speaks of a woman agriculturalist. She sold herself to the temple, together with her 3 sons, her younger brother, her younger sister, and her thus far one and only daughter-in-law. And yet, magnificent bronzes were produced even during this troubled period, as you see from this foursome group that depicts God Krishna, avatar of Vishnu, portrayed in his role as king, together with his 2 consorts. And standing by on the far right is his vehicle, the divine eagle Garuda, who is always portrayed as a winged human with a beaked nose, and who is as swift as the wind itself. Those of you who may have traveled to Indonesia may have flown on their national airline that is named Garuda Airlines after Vishnu's divine eagle. The bronzes of this commanding group reflect the peak of the Chola artists' achievements during the 13th century. We see a predilection for sharp definition, whether of the nose or of the nipples, and a closer than ever attention to details of jewelry and ornamentation. The imagery is admirable for its precise execution, but it's far distant, over 300 years distant, from the beginnings of bronze imagery in the 9th century. Some among you may infinitely prefer the crisp, detailed, and precise execution of the later images. And why not prefer these later images? Is it Bernini's exuberance or Michelangelo's restrained power that you find more appealing? Meticulously executed images of Vishnu's other avatars, too, were created during the 13th century. To the left is the 3rd avatar as the gigantic snouted boar, Varaha, in which form Vishnu prevented the earth from drowning in the waters of the cosmic ocean. He dived into its depths and rescued the earth, and you see her as personified goddess Earth, seated on his bent left knee. To the right is Vishnu's 4th incarnation as man-lion, Narasimha. While thus far we have seen that Shiva largely dominated the Chola scene, followers of Vishnu increased in number towards the end of the Chola period. So much so that during this period, a coastal Shiva temple recorded in an inscription its decision to confiscate the property of those priests of Shiva who mingled freely with Vishnu devotees. By the mid-13th century, bronzes are created that are solemn, dignified, regal, stately, such as this fine seated Shiva and Uma duo. A comparison with the 10th century group reveals a loss of intimacy, a lessening of interaction between the 2 figures, a distancing from the viewer devotee. But this is not a diminishing of artistic talent, nor a weakening of interest on the part of patrons. Rather, it's a change in taste and a corresponding intentionality of response on the part of the artist. To demonstrate this change, let's consider just one feature of the torso of goddess Uma, the contour and placement of her breasts. Look at the smooth flow of the breasts on the Tiruvangadu masterpiece of the year 1012 that we examined in Lecture 4. Descending gently from her sloping shoulders, the breasts curve under softly, with nipples barely indicated. By 1100, the urge, if I may say so, is to pull up those absent bra straps so that the breasts are uplifted, though still softly rounded. We move into the 1200s, and the breasts are about as high as they can go. Nipples stand out prominently. The encircling areola is accentuated. A change of proportion, a change of precision of technique, and the preference of the 13th century. By 1275, Chola power was severely weakened, and rivals to south and north began taking over portions of Chola territories and sponsoring festivals in their temples. At Tiruvangadu, the temple of our master bronze sculptor, an inscription of the year 1280 informs us that festivals had not been celebrated at the temple for some years now. 3 years later, a gift of land enabled the restart of rituals and festivals. But this was now in the name of the Pandya king of Madurai. The Chola dynasty was a thing of the past. It's somewhat ironical, then, that it's in the year 1281 that a Chola-style Shiva temple was built in Quanzhou in South China by an expatriate Tamil merchant community. It is celebrated in a Tamil inscription that proclaims that the temple, built by a Tamil merchant, received the sanction and blessing of the Mongol ruler Chagatai Khan. At the top center is a later Chinese Buddhist temple that incorporates a few stone pillars and base moldings of the earlier Chola-style temple. And the Krishna medallion to the upper left, the Shiva medallion to the upper right, adorn these pillars. It's time, finally, to address an issue that I have hinted at in many of our meetings: the mystery of buried bronzes, the enigma of missing bronzes. We know from inscriptions that Rajaraja's royal temple possessed 66 bronzes. Only these 2 survive, one in the temple itself, the other in the Tanjavur Art Gallery. Where are the remaining 64 bronzes? And what happened to the 400 items of jewelry that we looked at that were gifted to the 66 bronzes? An inscription at this modestly sized Aduturai temple on the left speaks of 25 bronzes. None of Chola date survive. Where did they go? What happened to them? Or we could turn to the 1212 royal temple at Tribhuvanam, whose begging lord we see again here. And we may ask where the remaining images are. A parallel situation exists with the hundreds of smaller temples in the Kaveri Basin. During my first research trip into Tamil Nadu a good 35 years ago, I remember my sharp disappointment at seeing everywhere bronze images dating from the 15th century, during the post-Chola period of Vijayanagar rule. What had happened to the many Chola bronzes of the inscriptions? The mystery of the missing bronzes and of the missing jewels owes its explanation almost entirely to the events of the year 1310, when Malik Kafur, general of the armies of the Delhi Sultanate, marched south to tap into the fabled wealth of the temples of South India. The Sultanate was in need of money to fund its activities in North India, and the temple jewels of South India seemed to provide the perfect answer. And just look at these more modern jewels: gold, diamonds, rubies, pearls. The news of the approach of the army of Malik Kafur spread fast. Every temple in the Tamil country began the necessary preparations. Fearing desecration of their sacred bronzes, temples promptly and secretly buried them in carefully prepared pits upon a bed of sand, covering them with darba or sacrificial grass, following ceremonies prescribed by ritual texts. Here are the words of Amir Khusrau, 14th century poet and scholar, who wrote about the Delhi Sultanate army's determined raids for treasure. He writes, "At every corner, conquest opened a door to them, and in all that devastated land, wherever treasure remained hidden in the earth, it was sifted, searched through, and carted away, so that nothing remained to the infidels of their gold but an echo, and of their gems a flaming fire." Note the total disinterest in the sacred bronzes that's apparent from their non-mention. For Amir Khusrau and Malik Kafur, they were irrelevant. It was the valuable gold and gems that would help the Sultanate in its campaigns. That temple bronzes suffered incidental damage and destruction is certain, but how many were destroyed as a byproduct of their mission is difficult to say. The intention of the temple custodians who buried their beloved bronzes was, of course, to retrieve them for worship once the threat from the north had receded. But things did not go according to plan. Malik Kafur's campaign lasted an entire year. He left Delhi on October 13th, 1310, and he returned back on October 18th, 1311, with tremendous wealth that included 312 elephants, 20,000 horses, and gold equivalent to 100 million coins. The Delhi Sultanate sent a second army under Khusrau Khan and also established their own governor in Madurai, the erstwhile Pandya capital to the south. The governor soon declared himself as the independent sultan of a new sultanate named Mabar, and it endured from 1334 to 1378 under a series of sultans. The intention of Tamil temple priests to restore buried bronzes had to be re-evaluated and postponed. The secret burial spots and hidden storage areas of the bronzes were known only to a trusted few in each temple. 68 years intervened from 1310, the year of burial, to 1378, when the last Sultan of Madurai was defeated by the founder of the new Vijayanagar Empire. In this time, those who knew the location of the secret burial spots died without passing on what must have been highly classified information, surely state secrets. In the 15th century, the Hindu rulers of the new Vijayanagar dynasty took over Chola territory and all of its sacred temples. To replace the many missing bronzes, they commissioned new bronzes that now took pride of place in the vibrant and continuing temple festival cycle. Vijayanagar bronzes lack the panache, the graceful stance, the gentle poise of their earlier Chola counterparts. Limbs tend to be tubular, bodies are elongated, stances are often stiff. Just compare Hunter Saint Kanappan from the hands of a Vijayanagar and a Chola artist, and try the same comparison with images of Shiva as half-woman. In the 150 years that had intervened, the lack of demand for temple bronzes apparently caused the best wax modelers to move away from the Kaveri Delta. And yet, the best of the Vijayanagar bronzes, like these portraits of an emperor with his two queens, display authority and a commanding presence. The few Chola temples that retained memory of the burial spots of their bronzes were able to unearth them. One such is a Vishnu temple at Kannanur, northeast of Trichy, where an inscription of the 15th century informs us that the image of Vishnu, who had retreated to a safe house due to the invasion of the Turushkas are Turks, the generic term for Muslims, was now reconsecrated and restored to its original place of worship. Great numbers of images stayed buried. while a certain number must have been destroyed by happenstance in the quest for jewels. Fast forward to the mid-20th century, when temples in Tamil Nadu began a process of expansion to accommodate growing numbers of devotees by adding new halls to existing temples. As temple after temple dug down to lay new foundations, they came across buried bronzes. Those ancient Chola bronzes, buried in 1310, that everyone assumed were lost forever. But here they were. The superb Tiruvangadu bronzes that were our focus in Lecture 4 were discovered as 4 different buried hoards, unearthed over a period of close to 50 years. The first group, that included a modest-sized dancing lord, whom you see to the top left, emerged in 1925, and that group was deposited in the temple itself. In 1951, 3 sets of images that we examined as the work of the Tiruvangadu master, the rest of the images on the top row, were discovered while farmers ploughed a field immediately adjoining the temple. The district revenue collector acquired these bronzes for display in his newly established Tanjore Art Gallery. In 1960, another 12 images were unearthed while building the foundations for a new shrine. 2 of these images, including Shiva as half-woman, the middle row far right that we looked at, are now in the Government Museum in Chennai, while 10 were deposited in the temple. Finally, in the year 1972, 16 more images were found, all of which are now in the Tanjavur Art Gallery. So we find that this influential, though non-royal temple the patrons commissioned 40 bronzes to fulfill the requirements of what was surely an elaborately expanded festival cycle. A mere 6 years ago, in 2010, the authorities of a small temple at Tiruvindalur in the coastal belt dug a trench some 12 feet deep into the floor of the hall in front of the sanctum as part of a program of renovation and expansion. They discovered 12 bronzes that included a stunning image of the emaciated woman saint known as the Mother of Karaikal, whom we encountered last week both in the Kaveri Delta and in Sri Lanka. And you see her in front of this image of seated Shiva and Uma, then on her own and to the far right after having been cleaned and restored. This burial included a set of the largest royal copperplate charters yet recovered, carrying intact the ring and the seal of the ruling Chola king. Dating to the year 1065, the 85 copper plates, each a little larger than legal pad size, weighs all of 330 pounds. And you see it here in the museum in Chennai after cleaning. A small temple at Eshalam in the coastal belt, constructed by the guru of Emperor Rajendra in the year 1027, reflects a smaller and a different requirement in its bronze images. In the 1980s, while trying to level the granite paving stones of the courtyard, the local laborers discovered a neatly constructed layered burial. 2 layers of radially arranged bronze images were placed in river sand face side down. The larger images in the lower layer bore the weight of the smaller images placed upon them, and beneath the entire group was a copperplate charter of Emperor Rajendra. Of these 23 bronzes, only 8 are sizable processional bronzes, 4 were likely the guru's objects of personal devotion, and the rest are ritual objects. A temple at Nallur reveals a slightly different modus operandi, in that its priests didn't bury their bronzes, but hid them away in an underground cellar. In 1980, a brick wall was broken down to reveal 2 strong wooden doors, locked and sealed. These were broken open, led to an empty room filled with sand. The wall caved in almost immediately to reveal granite slabs at one corner that opened up like a trapdoor. Steps led to an empty underground chamber that led to a second room that contained 16 bronzes of exceptional quality, together with ornamental lamps and temple vessels. Reads like Indiana Jones, does it not? I could go on to enumerate further bronze retrievals, but I think the point is made. Every few months, the Tamil Nadu newspapers carry an item about yet another temple restoration, resulting in the find of early bronzes. And several finds, in fact, most of them, never make their way into the media. It's close to impossible to obtain any reliable figures on the number of bronzes that have been unearthed as treasure troves in the last 50 years. My estimate, a pure guesstimate, and probably a woeful underestimate, is 1,000 bronzes. This is where the 20th century art market enters the scene. Valued by devotees for their sacred aura, today Chola bronzes are prized by art lovers for their aesthetic excellence. And increasing interest in their possession has transformed them into contested items once they appear on the international art market. The earliest such dispute occurred in the 1970s. It revolved around this bronze Shiva as the Dancing Lord, acquired by collector Norton Simon of Hunt Foods fame and his actress wife Jennifer Jones. Issues of provenance were only just beginning to rear their head. The UNESCO Convention relating to the export of art objects was passed in 1970, ratified by the United States in 1972. Collectors and museums wishing to acquire an object now needed proof that the object in question was outside India prior to the cutoff date of either 1970 for the UK or 72 for the US. An unfortunate byproduct of this rule was the production of false documents of provenance. For objects from India, the UK became the obvious source of origin for these newly produced provenance documents. After all, the UK had acquired vast numbers of objects from India during their over 2 centuries of colonial rule. The facts of the Norton Simon case were irrefutable. The Dancing Shiva, unearthed in 1951 from the grounds of the Shivapuram temple, was badly corroded, as all such images are. The temple authorities sent it to a local metalsmith for renewal. What came back was a copy that the temple unknowingly accepted as the original. The original made its way to a dealer in Bombay, where it was seen by a number of scholars. 20 years passed. The image arrived in Pasadena in 1973, having been bought by Norton Simon for $1 million. In the 70s, that was a sizable sum for an artwork from India. The following year, 1974, the government of India filed a suit against Norton Simon, demanding the return of the Dancing Shiva. Lawyers warned the government of India that they were likely to lose the case, despite the fact that there was no doubt that the image had been unlawfully removed from the Shivapuram temple. The damning factor was that the bronze had been known to be in a Bombay dealer's showroom for many years, where it had been identified by several experts. That was when the government of India should have demanded that the stolen image be returned to its original home, the Shivapuram temple. The case was settled out of court, with Norton Simon's ingenious solution that he would voluntarily return the Dancing Shiva to India after he had displayed it for a period of 10 years at his new museum in Pasadena, California. In return, he demanded and was given the government of India's assurance that they would not investigate or raise repatriation demands about any other objects in his collection. The Shivapuram dancer stood in splendor in the Norton Simon Museum for 10 years, after which it returned to India. But instead of going back to the Shivapuram temple, where it could be adored by devotees, or into a museum where it could be admired by art lovers, it went into the oblivion of a bank vault. There it stays. A second dancing Shiva, in the possession of the Canadian Bumper Corporation, provoked a bizarre ruling from the London High Court in 1986. Sent to the British Museum for conservation, it was identified as belonging to a temple at Pattur in the Kaveri Delta, where it had been unearthed, and it was claimed by the Government of India as a stolen piece. The court case stretched over 44 working days. The testimony was lengthy. Some was art historical, some was technical, some was legal, all fairly tedious. But out of it came an extraordinary ruling in favor of the Government of India. Justice Kennedy of the London High Court ruled that the bronze image of dancing Shiva belonged not to the temple authorities, not to the temple trustees, not to the residents of the village of Shivapuram. It belonged to the god of the temple. It belonged to the stone aniconic linga emblem of Shiva in the sanctum, similar to the one you see on the right. Justice Kennedy ruled that this Shiva linga was a juristic entity who could lay claim to the bronze, which was a portable festival image of one of his own manifestations. The bronze dancing Shiva was to be returned to the temple premises and to the Shiva enshrined in the sanctum, who had just been proclaimed a juristic entity. This landmark ruling reduced museum curators and art dealers to tears for fear of the claims that might follow. Suing Shiva dismays dealers, read Alison Beckett's title piece in the Times of London for February 21st, 1988. Wisely, the Government of India stayed silent and low-key. Sadly, this judgment was not fulfilled according to Justice Kennedy's ruling. Dancing Shiva went back to India, and it was received on arrival by the state chief minister, Jayalalalitha, and by a host of priests who performed the appropriate reconsecration rituals, dressing and adorning the bronze. But instead of returning to the temple, the dancing lord is sequestered in an unidentified safe house. The most recent embarrassment concerned two Australian museums, one of which purchased this Chola bronze dancing Shiva that was stolen from its temple, and the other museum acquired a Chola stone image of Shiva as half-woman that was removed from its niche on the walls of a Chola temple. In September 2014, the Australian Prime Minister made a visit to India to meet with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Tony Abbott's mission was to sign two deals, one on nuclear cooperation, the other on trade. He made use of that occasion to establish good faith by handing over both images to India. These images, too, are today in an unidentified safe house. In our concluding minutes, I'd like to reflect on the sacred bronzes that we have looked at over the past 6 weeks. Each and every bronze, as we have seen, is a portable image intended to be carried in procession so that the god and goddess might view their devotees, who in turn could join together in joyous celebration of their gods. The bronzes are adorned with sumptuous silks, perfumed with sandal paste and camphor, embellished with jewelry in gold and precious stones, adorned with flower garlands, offered choice food. This food, prepared by temple kitchens, was then distributed to temple employees and devotees. Visitors, too. In the last 2 years, as I revisited temples in Tamil Nadu looking at bronzes, I was a recipient of this largesse. I was given a leaf bowl of pongal, which is khichdi, a risotto-like dish that I always happily accepted and invariably finished. Temple festivals were not a drain on the economy. Rather, they were, and still are, a mechanism of redistribution. The bronzes themselves emerged into this confident early perfection in the second half of the 9th century, seemingly out of nowhere. Clearly, even a struggling kingdom trying to establish itself as the prime political force in the region could produce superb works of sacred art. Enabling this productivity, we saw, were the rich rice harvests of the Kaveri Delta that was made possible by an ingenious irrigation system. While the new Chola capital was based 50 miles inland, it was the coastal strip with its major ports and its numerous vibrant temples that was the center of activity for devotees and for the wax modelers and metal casters of the early period. Each Chola bronze is unique. It's one of a kind. The direct lost wax process does not allow the retention either of the original wax model that is melted away or of the clay mold that is broken open. The very process of creation disallows the replication of an image. Where did these bronze casters secure their supplies of copper, since copper is not to be found in the Kaveri Basin or in any part of Tamil Nadu? Based on current excavations by 2 Sri Lankan scholars, I proposed at our first meeting the possibility that the copper came from Sri Lanka, the immediate island neighbor of the Cholas. ICP laboratory testing is still pending on samples taken from 5 bronzes in 3 US museums. And I hope to be able to report back in the near future on whether or not Sri Lanka is the source of Chola copper. A further point about Chola bronzes that is visually obvious, but nevertheless bears repetition. The sacred and the sensuous coexist and overlap seamlessly in the sacred bronzes around which the temple ritual cycle focuses. Beauty was one major avenue of approach to the divine, and it was this path of beauty that was sung by the saints in their many hymns and embraced by devotees. The sacred and the sensuous are indeed part of a continuum. The bronze festival cycle, initiated by the Cholas and sustained by the succeeding Vijayanagar and Nayak dynasties, continued to thrive during British rule. To this day, it dominates the sacred ethos of the large towns and major temples of Tamil Nadu, emphasis on the word large and major. And to give you one example, last year, as I arrived early morning into the port town of Nagapattinam to visit its museum, I discovered that the government had announced just the day before that its schools and public institutions would remain closed on June 30th, 2015, the day I arrived, so that everyone could partake in a major temple festival. However, many small temples with superb bronzes of early Chola date, some of which we examined in our earlier meetings, are today without a single bronze. To ensure security, all their bronzes have been removed to a safe house, depriving these temples of their ability to conduct festivals. A loaner bronze is given to them for a single day so that they may celebrate the major annual festival that normally extends over several days. These many smaller temples and towns have lost the mechanism that brought the residents together at least once a month in joyous celebrations that provided socioeconomic benefits and that fostered togetherness. As we leave these remarkable bronzes, are there overarching phrases that will stay with us and resonate in meaningful ways? I give you a few, and I look forward to hearing from you with others. master artists capable of touching a chord in our hearts, a depth of devotion that manifests as superb imagery, zeal to participate in festivals of a celebratory nature, priestly assurance to fulfill donors' wishes, temple obligation to safeguard images, a female donor base that included princesses and queens. And what were the circumstances that enabled the accumulation of wealth that translated into this unprecedented creativity? An innovative irrigation system that led to exceptional agricultural prosperity, powerful merchant guilds engaged in lucrative overseas trade, the quest via both war and trade for pearls, corals, rubies, gold, copper. And we have seen that political turmoil rarely interfered with the production of superb imagery. Certain rare moments in time do indeed generate unprecedented creativity and originality in the arts, and the Chola period was one such exceptional chapter. Technology, trade contacts, agricultural prosperity, the socio-economic milieu, united with religious intensity and aesthetic intentionality to create superb works of sacred art. As I leave you after 6 Sundays spent in the world of the Cholas, I'd like to indulge in some meditations on the title of this series, to ponder the powerful hold that a supreme deity, addressed as thief who stole my heart, exerted over the emotions of devotees. This entrancing being, this Shiva, was conjured up in compelling verbal pictures by the saints and translated into bronzes of enchanting beauty by Chola artists. India visualizes its divinities as youthful, captivating beings. Bodily beauty, it was believed, went hand in hand with spiritual grandeur. Physical beauty is viewed as an invariable accompaniment of divine spiritual glory. The saints sang ecstatically of a beauty that enters your heart and captures you body and soul. Listen to how Saint Appar invokes Lord Shiva in 3 consecutive verses of one of his sacred hymns, using words like sugar and honey that just about every language uses for a dearly beloved. Honey, milk moon and sun, youth crowned with the celestial white moon, wisdom incarnate as the fire that consumed the god of spring. How can I forget him? Sugar, sweet syrup of sugarcane, bright one, brilliant as a lightning flash, golden one, my lord who glitters like a hill of gems. How can I forget him? Sugarcane, lump of sweet sugar candy. The word for sugar candy is shakkarakatti. It's a word we use for the beloved, we use for our enchanting toddler. Sugarcane, lump of sweet sugar candy, be in the fragrant flower, light that dwells in every flame. Our Lord who loves flower buds gathered at dawn. How can I forget him? Mesmerized and enthralled by his beautiful Lord, Saint Appar expressed his total surrender to Shiva. And here are the joyous and triumphant final lines of 3 verses. I have encircled him in love's embrace. I have placed him deep within my heart. I have devoured him in desire. He is indeed the thief who stole my heart. Yen ullam kavar kalvan. Thank you for having accompanied me these past 6 weeks on an exploration of over 4 centuries in Chola India. I have enjoyed this journey in territory along the banks of the Kaveri River. I hope you have enjoyed it too. Thank you.